What's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. So I had the joy of going to go see Dev Patel's new movie, Monkey Man, in theaters. Let's talk about it.
My movie review.
Alrighty, so right off the bat, I do want to go ahead and issue a spoiler warning for people who have not seen the movie. I did really enjoy this movie, and I had a really good time with it. So there is a great possibility that I might say something that might potentially ruin this movie for you. So if you haven't seen it, I would recommend clicking off, maybe coming back and watching this review later. But that being said, let's dive into this. Alrighty, so I want to go ahead and start off with some of the behind-the-scenes stuff because this movie is incredibly good, and some of the stuff that they had to do behind the scenes to make this movie even come to fruition is really insane, so I wanted to talk about it. Like I had mentioned, this is a Dev Patel movie. He directed this movie. It's his directorial debut, and I think it might be one of the best directorial debuts I've ever seen. Obviously, I haven't seen a whole lot, but it's really good. I think that Dev Patel in this, his acting is incredible, and everything about him in this is absolutely fantastic. But I think it's really interesting, the story behind how this story came to be. So, for people who do not know, this movie originally was going to be a Netflix original movie. It started off back in like 2020, 2022, somewhere in that range. And they wrote this movie. They had a lot of the stuff down ready to produce this movie. And they were starting to go into some of the early development stuff for this movie. Like I said, it was going to be on Netflix. And some stuff kind of happened. There was kind of a falling out, and Netflix decided that they didn't want to do this project anymore. And for a really long time, Dev Patel was trying his best to kind of gather whatever resources he could to still get this movie going. And with everything that he could do to kind of like pull stuff together, he still did not have enough money to fully fund the project by himself. And he worked really hard on it, and he still really wanted it to happen. So eventually, Jordan Peele, the man, the myth, the legend, saw the project, saw a bunch of stuff about it, read the script, and really liked it. So he pushed heavily for it. He came on as a producer for it, and he made sure that this movie got to see more than just going on to Netflix, but had a theatrical release. And I'm really glad he did. I think this is the really good action movie, and it's one that definitely deserves to be seen on the big screen. So to go from that, talking about the actual story, the actual action, and everything in between, I want to start off by talking about the couple of big complaints that I've heard about this movie from the internet, because online I've watched a couple of reviews or whatever, and I've seen a couple of reviews. I see that there's two major things that a lot of people are talking about, and both of them are kind of on the technical side of things. So one thing that I want to talk about, this was a rumor. I still to this day don't know if it's true. I don't know if there's any fact or weight behind it. But supposedly while they were making this movie, they were starting to run out of budget. So some of the fight sequences and some of the moments in this movie needed to be recorded on either cell phones, like an iPhone or whatever, or GoPros. And there's a couple of sequences that I have a theory about where in the movie those scenes might have happened or might have taken place. So I'm going to explain those. But the two complaints that I've seen the most on this movie so far is one about the camera having a lot of close-ups, and one about there being a lot of shaky cams. So right off the bat, I do kind of agree with the close-ups. There's a lot of fight sequences early on in the movie where Dev Patel is getting really close and hands-on with some of the people he's fighting, and it'll randomly like go from like being a further shot where you can see the entire room and you can have a good idea of everything that's going on in the room, to all of a sudden you're just getting a close-up on Dev Patel's eyes. And I think that it does a good job showcasing his facial emotions and him being able to like say exactly what he's thinking and feeling without having to actually say lines of dialogue there. But at the same time, it's kind of taking away from the scale. Like, there are some fight sequences that take place in like really small rooms and really crowded hallways, and whenever they get these really nice close-ups, it kind of takes away from you being able to tell how small the room that they're in is. Like, for one, there's a fight sequence about halfway through the movie where he goes upstairs into some hotel room that has a lot of like really sketchy stuff going on, and someone starts chasing him around with an axe. And there are a couple of moments where extreme close-ups kind of like take away from the fact that you can't really tell how close these guys are to each other and how small the room that they're in really is. So I do understand the complaints there. I do think that that stuff could have been slightly better. But on top of that, I think that something that sucks about it is the fighting choreography and everything that is happening with these fighting choreography and these fighting sequences are perfectly timed. Like, it's really well executed stuff. You can tell that the choreography is something that has been practiced, and they have the timing absolutely perfectly down. And it's a lot of really impressive stunts happening right here. And something that kind of is upsetting about some of these close-ups is there are some times where you can't really tell who is doing what, or what the movements that they're doing is actually serving as like a purpose. Like there'll be a couple of fight sequences where two people are like hitting each other and they're doing these weird things, and it's like you can't tell when they're doing a defensive move, you can't tell when they're doing an offensive move, and you can't tell the purpose of some of their movements, which sucks because like I said, the choreography here is fantastic and you could tell everything that's happening is happening for a specific reason. So I kind of understand that complaint. I do agree that some of the close-ups do take away from some of the great moments in this fight sequences. But then I wanted to talk about the shaky cam as well, because I actually disagree with this. I think that the shaky cam, for the most part in this movie, works incredibly well for two reasons. One, this movie, obviously, despite being like a really high-budget action movie, it does have moments where it feels kind of like a lower-budget action movie, and I think that it actually does a really good job of kind of feeling more fresh and kind of feeling more like this character is on the run. He's not going to be able to control his breathing as much. He's definitely not as experienced as a fighter in the beginning of the movie. And I think that the shaky cam goes really well with that, because towards the end of the movie, when we're having our last like 30 minutes worth of fight sequences, there's a lot more like steady cameras. There's a lot more like further away shots, and there's a lot of really great stuff that they do with the camera work towards the end that I will be praising a little bit here later. But I think that the shaky cams for this part of the movie were 100% intentional, because I think that a lot of the shaky cam sequences are towards the beginning of the movie, and at the beginning of the movie, he's doing kind of these like underground wrestling matches, these boxing matches or whatever, and he's losing every single fight. He's losing, he's getting booed off the mat, he's not winning a lot of money, he's bleeding a lot, and he's really struggling to keep fighting. And I think that part of the shaky cam does a really good job of showing how inexperienced he is. And throughout the movie, he's kind of like learning a little bit here and there, and he's taking a lot of punches. And then he finally goes to do the big assassination that he's trying to do in the first act of the movie. And when everything goes like stale and nothing like goes to plan and everything kind of like starts falling apart on him, I feel like this is where a lot of the shaky cams start coming in, because he's losing. He doesn't know how to fight. He's not as experienced. And I think that the shaky cams match really well with that. And then earlier, like I had mentioned, there were some sequences that were supposedly filmed on GoPros and on iPhone cameras. I feel like these are probably some of them, because there are a couple of moments where he's fighting in really small close quarters with people that it'll randomly like get blurry. And I feel like that is a perfect artistic decision to make, to kind of keep footage from different quality of cameras in the same movie without it feeling out of place. And then on top of that, there are a couple of fight sequences where they randomly will like show the view from above, and it'll kind of like look a little blurry, it'll be a little shaky and stuff like that. And I feel like that definitely is the kind of camera work you can do with a GoPro a little bit better than some of the big expensive cinematic cameras. So that being said, I really like the fact that it starts off with a little bit of shaky cam, a lot of blurry vision and everything like that. And then by the end of the movie, we're getting the more stable stuff, because he's trained a lot and he's had a lot of time to grow as a character, and he's learned a lot more about like fighting techniques and stuff like that. And I think it's really interesting. I really like the way that they did that. But yeah, so now to talk about the plot aspect of things and talk about more of all of the great things about this movie, because I think it's fantastic. Obviously, want to talk about the acting. Fantastic. Dev Patel does a really good job. Some of the older actors who are kind of playing like mentor figures for him. The guy who plays the main villain of this movie is absolutely intimidating and terrifying. And I love it. I think that the acting all around is incredible. I don't think that there's any necessarily like standouts aside from Dev Patel. Obviously, he's absolutely carries this movie, and he does such a brilliant job with it. But yeah, I really like the acting, and I also really like the directing. Like I said earlier, I think this might be one of the best directed, what's it called? This might be one of the best directorial debuts I've ever seen. And I think that a lot of it is just like, Dev Patel had a vision, and you can tell he had a specific vision for the movie. He had a specific style that he was going for. He really wanted to include specific music and specific, like feelings for these characters to kind of experience here. And I think that he does such a great job portraying that vision here. Definitely one of the most like culturally rich action films I've seen in a really, really long time. And on top of that, I think that this movie does a really, really great job of implementing the story throughout this entire film, because it starts off really smart and simple with a mother kind of telling a bedtime story to her son. They're living in a forest. They're not necessarily like poor at this point, but they're not necessarily rich either. They're living off of the land, making the best out of what they have. And she tells him the story of a monkey god who eats the brightest fruit in the tree, ends up being the sun, and then he ends up getting tortured by the gods. And it's kind of revealed that like this god is somebody who has a lot of powers, and he's somebody who has a bunch of strength, but with that comes the burden of having to protect people. And it tells us the story of the Monkey King, and I think that they do a really, really good job of showcasing this character. And I think that this movie, I will be honest, I will probably need to watch a couple more times to fully understand the story and some of the lore behind it. But it does a really beautiful job of showcasing like this character becoming a god, but has to be tortured first and has to lose a bit of himself before he can grow into his final form. And that happens with Dev Patel's character. You basically watch him go through this entire story that we heard read to him during the beginning of the movie. And it's incredibly, incredibly well done. It's very good with balancing that kind of like religious aspect of him slowly becoming a god. And it also does a really good job of having the believers walking amongst him and not necessarily him feeling like a messiah, if that makes sense. But that being said, really, really love the story aspect of it. And I wanted to shout it out because a lot of action films nowadays, when they care so much about the action, they lose a lot in the story. I feel like the Extraction movies with Chris Evans are really great. I said Chris Evans, I meant Chris Hemsworth. But I feel like those Extraction movies are a good example of this, where it's like, we got a really, really epic, like 20-minute long one take in Extraction 2, but the story of that movie was not great. It wasn't that interesting. There weren't any characters you could really understand or really have a good gripe with. And overall, even like Chris Hemsworth's character, you don't really get what his deal is. In this movie, you get Dev Patel's character. You feel the pain that he's feeling. You experience a lot of the hardship that he dealt with growing up. And there's the nights where he's like lying awake at night and he's having these flashbacks to when he was a kid and some of these great moments that he shared with his mother. And then by the end of the movie, you end up seeing the sequence where Dev Patel's mother died in this. And it's incredibly heartbreaking. It's incredibly gut-wrenching. And it's terrible. Like, it really does put a really, really big, like, pit in your stomach while you're watching it. And you can understand why this person is so driven with rage, why he has this, like, need to murder this specific character that he's going after the entire movie. And it's really, really well written. It's really, really well acted. I think that there's a couple of moments early on in the film where Dev Patel's character has these breakdowns, and they're really, really well acted all around. And overall, I just really, really enjoyed this movie. I think that I could probably go on about it for a lot longer, but I'm probably just going to go ahead and say a couple of my last final things that I want to talk about. This movie does a brilliant job showcasing the main protagonist hitting rock bottom at the midpoint. I think that this might be one of the best midpoints I've seen in a movie in a really, really long time, because for people who do not know, like, the structural plot aspect of things, the midpoint of a movie is supposed to be a turning point. It's supposed to be where a character experiences something for the first time and it literally feels like their world is being turned upside down. And this movie does it perfectly. We show Dev Patel as he is slowly training for this assassination he's trying to do. He works up the ranks of the big corporation in which, you know, the person he wants to kill works for, or he at least spends a lot of time in this building. So he starts off as a little busboy. He becomes somebody who's a waiter for some of the higher ups. He gets into the VIP lounge where he sells cocaine to people and stuff like that. And he's doing a really good job of working up the ranks. And meanwhile, he's still doing his boxing that he does in the underground boxing ring and getting his ass handed to him every night. He's sleeping in a room full of like 20 other people who are homeless and can't afford rent. And he's struggling to, you know, sleep at night. He's got a gun and he's now practicing his aim and stuff like that. And it really feels like for this first half of the movie that he's becoming a person who is able to take care of this stuff. He's becoming a John Wick type, and he definitely seems like he is ready for killing this person he's going after. And then we get to the halfway point. He's finally taking over the plan or whatever. He gets the guy to go into the bathroom by himself. He follows him into the bathroom. He locks the door. He has the gun. He pulls it out, and things don't go to plan. Something happens. I think that somebody was in the stall behind him or something, and it completely breaks his focus. He loses the gun. They end up having a really bad fight, and he ends up having to run away. And it becomes like a nice, like 20-minute long action sequence with him running from the cops. Like I said earlier, he runs into a building that's kind of doing a lot of sketchy shit, ends up getting into an axe fight with somebody while he's handcuffed. He ends up eventually ending up on a rooftop, running from rooftop to rooftop, and then landing in a lake and almost dying. And then this is where he gets pulled out. And I really, really love like the first thing that he like has spoken to him whenever he wakes up is somebody explaining that like a normal person would have died going through the wounds that you have and with all of the pain and suffering that you have been through, but you're still alive for a reason. We have to figure out what that reason is. And then him becoming kind of the Monkey King, training in a way that he's never trained before, going back to his old boxing ring and beating the guy who's beat him up for so long. Incredibly triumphant movie, and I absolutely love the way that they do the training montage. They have a person who lives in the temple that like took him in playing the bongos while he is training, and it's so satisfying. Like I said earlier, the score of this movie is absolutely fantastic, and it is incredibly culturally rich, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, that being said, I think that this is one of the best action movies I've ever seen. I will say this, take that with a grain of salt. I have not seen John Wick 2, John Wick 3, or John Wick 4. And I know that a lot of people really love John Wick 4, so I can't be like this is the greatest action movie of all time when I haven't seen some pretty big ones. But I really enjoyed it, and I definitely would recommend people go check it out. But yeah, if I had to give this movie a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, I genuinely think I'm going to give this one a 94. It's really good. There's very little things that I would change about it. Like I said, the shaky cam and the close-ups kind of take away from some of the key moments. But overall, I think that we experience everything that Dev Patel is going through in such a beautiful way, in such an articulate way, that it's a pretty damn good movie. But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Pow, pow, pow.
Back at it again, but that's irrelevant. Flow so smooth, they calling me Mr. Elegant. Like an elephant, I got a long nose. Like a president, I've got a few hoes. Swift with a stutter, I'm smooth like butter. Don't see it coming when I slip undercover. Like a big dog, but I don't bite. I'm still a big broad, I'd win that fight. Come match you and I knock out your lights.